President Trump's 2020 campaign is cutting ties with some of its pollsters after internal numbers were leaked to the media showing Joe Biden ahead of Trump in several key states. That's according to one person close to the campaign who spoke to NBC News. The move comes after NBC obtained details from a March internal poll that found Trump trailing Biden in 11 states. In Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Michigan, 4 states where Trump edged Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton out by narrow margins that proved decisive in his victory, Trump trails Biden by double digits. In 3 of those states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida, Biden leads sit outside the margin of error. Trump also trails the former vice president by 17 points in Virginia, 15 points in Maine, 14 points in Minnesota, 8 points in North Carolina, 7 points in Iowa, 6 points in Georgia, and 1 point in Ohio.
Just stop right there.
It's just losing.
I mean, let's keep those up for a second. And again, a long, long way to go, Jonathan Lemire. But 17 points in Virginia, 15 points in Maine, 14 in Minnesota. He got within 1 point last year. 8 in North Carolina, going to be a swing state. Iowa State, he won by what, 8 or 9 points?
I think 9, yeah.
Yeah, and Georgia +6. People have been saying for a long time Georgia and Texas are going blue at some point. Don't know if this would be the year. But all that being said, yes, it is early, and Trump always underperforms in polls, but we're going to be showing some Fox News polls coming up that show considerable problems for the president as well. I'm curious, are you getting information out of the White House that the president is starting to understand this is a real concern, that he has a lot of work to do? Or does he still think that he can go to rallies, rev up the base, keep saying the same thing, and sneak out another win?
He is saying publicly and privately that he feels like these polls don't make sense. He doesn't believe in them. And that this is sort of an old politics thing. You don't like the poll, get rid of the pollsters. They dismissed a couple of the pollsters who were behind them.
So is there any reason why the president says, because as much of a show as he puts on, I mean, we all know he's got an extraordinary gut when it comes to politics. Is there any reason why he believes these polls are so far off?
He believes that the electorate's going to look like it did last time, and that his voters were undercounted, that his support wasn't accurately measured in the polls, that there are these people out there who hadn't voted in decades, or who never spoke to a pollster, but who came out on election day. He believes those people are still there.
So does he believe, because it would be the opposite of what I believe. I mean, does he believe that his voters were at a low water mark? Because we all know black voting turnout went down for the first time in 20 years. I actually think that the Obama coalition was at its lowest ebb that we'll ever see it, I think, in our lifetimes.
These are real numbers, and there is certainly concern around the president, and it's a couple of things. Not only do they have to hold on to those Midwest battlegrounds where they squeaked out victories in 2016, but they know those margins are so tight. They know it's going to be tough to sort of thread that needle again. They're desperate to try to expand the map, and we're seeing some of those states there, the Minnesotas, the Virginias, the Maines. There aren't many places where the Trump campaign can go to actually try to swing a blue state, and the fact that they're down those big in those polls is worrisome, and there are people around the president who are concerned.
What does it say? What does it say internally about the White House staff that there are these constant leaks aimed at weakening their boss, the President of the United States, the leaking of the polls?
Now, this poll, we don't know exactly where the leak from, whether it came from the White House or someone who was read in on the polls from the campaign side, but certainly, at minimum, it's a message being sent. Like, look, you're in trouble here. You need to get to work.
So Nick, it's interesting the president believing that these polls are nonsense because, 2016, like I said, was everything had to break Donald Trump's way. Everything from the Comey letter 10 days out to the Comey letter 1 day out to black voting going down for the first time in 20 years. Everything broke his way. As he told me, I could have had 10 elections on 10 days and probably would have lost 9 of them. Yeah. But that one day, that was the day that the stars lined up for me. All that being said, considering everything that's happened over the past several years, I must say I'm completely at a loss at how he thinks he's going to get where he needs to go to get reelected again, while he still just keeps playing to that small base.
It's hard to be a black swan president. And if you won the first time by upending expectations, by coming from behind, it's easy to tell yourself you can do it again. I think what these polls tell us is what all the polling tells us. He's consistently unpopular. There are people who voted for him who look back and say, I'm not so sure about that anymore.
Well, and can we just talk about states really quickly?
Sure.
As a guy that grew up as a Republican cheering for Republicans his whole life, I can tell you, talk about black swan, like, Republicans don't win Wisconsin. Like, everything has to break just right for Republicans to win Wisconsin. Republicans don't win Pennsylvania. I've been calling Pennsylvania fool's gold for 20 years. So he won it on that day. But I don't think everybody understands what a huge uphill climb it will be for him to do that.
Well,
again.
he might, which is why he split the country.
I'm not sure it's the biggest uphill climb.
business.
Look, he's not favored. He's in a bad position in these polls. He has serious advantages, though. He's an incumbent president. He is outspending his whole field combined of Democrats on Facebook. He began raising money as soon as he was in office. He's going to have this whole year to fine-tune an apparatus of social media and advertising and bash the Democratic field. That is a real advantage in a long campaign like this. And it's not a referendum on him. It's a choice between two candidates, and it's hard to know how hard it's going to be for him until we can see.
Actually, I personally believe it's always a referendum on the president, the sitting president. And as far as all of the elections that I've seen, we're going to talk about Jimmy Carter in '76 in a second, but this feels a lot like Jimmy Carter a year before that election, a lot like it.
But Jimmy Carter didn't carry one element of the baggage that this president is carrying, and it's specifically women voters. I've talked to a couple of pollsters in the last couple of weeks, and they say the underlying numbers on women who are clearly most eligible, most likely to vote, are devastating against Donald Trump in terms of not voting for Donald Trump no matter what.
Yeah.
Huge number.
Right, but the only candidate the Obama coalition has come out for is Barack Obama. He's the first and last person that coalition came out to vote for.
Except in Alabama, in a special election, which is, Yamiche, pretty shocking, a special election which is supposed to be extraordinarily low turnout. Black voters in the state of Alabama came out and voted at the same percentage that they came out to vote when Barack Obama was at the top of the ticket. That's extraordinary and suggests that Donald Trump is going to inspire a lot of people to get out and vote this time.
Well, of course, the election you're talking about in Alabama is Doug Jones. And what we have to remember is Doug Jones had a long history of being interested in African-American issues, being interested in prosecuting the men responsible for the church bombing that killed those 4 girls in Alabama. And then, of course, you had Roy Moore, who was very much of a child molester, banned from the mall, all sorts of issues. That being said, the president, I still think, has an advantage here, which is one that I think polls, because of 2016, he can look at them and say, yeah, that's what they said last time. I still think I have this. Also, too, he hasn't, as much as his presidential, his tenure as president has been a roller coaster ride, he's also someone that has been consistent in who he is. He's been this wild card. He's been this person who's brash. His politics have always been something that people kind of turn their noses at. But there's this idea that evangelicals still like him, the economy's still doing well. So there's this idea that, and I should say white evangelicals still like him. So I think in the president's mind, he's thinking, I've consistently been myself, and if I do that again, I can win.
So the one thing that the president does not have going for him this time is the element of surprise. This weekend, I don't know how I stumbled across it, but a Trump supporter had put out a campaign where everybody in the media said Donald Trump will never be president. And every Democratic candidate said Donald Trump will never be president. Ann Coulter said that Donald Trump had the best chance of the Republicans of being elected president on Bill Maher's show. The whole audience laughed uproariously. The Simpsons had jokes about everybody joked.
Right.
And I remember you and I and a couple other people said Donald Trump had a good chance of being elected president. And again, the mere suggestion of that brought us and anybody else who said it like under withering abuse.
Right.
I remember
Freak out.
poor Nate Silver predicted that Donald Trump was going to win Florida. And he got absolutely eviscerated.
Right.
And his model switched to Hillary Clinton. So that's the element of surprise that he had. Now, if you don't think that this isn't like a political Bunker Hill where everybody is standing and waiting till they see the whites of their eyes, I mean, they are.
And take nothing for granted.
They're going to take nothing for granted.
And evangelicals, the surprising evangelicals who support Trump, I don't know what they're going to stand for beyond Trump, because the answer would probably be nothing, since they've let everything go in terms of what they believe in for this president.
Speaking as a guy that grew up as an evangelical, I think the biggest danger for Donald Trump among evangelicals is undervote. I think there are evangelicals. I mean, listen, he'll still win most evangelicals that go out and vote, white evangelicals, but he has to worry about an undervote this time, much like George W. Bush worried about in 2000 after his DUI arrest came out, and Karl Rove said they lost, a good chunk of votes, which actually kept that race close enough to turn it into the national nightmare that it was.
All right. More from that internal polling that led to Trump cutting ties with those pollsters in Texas, where a Democratic nominee hasn't won since President Jimmy Carter in 1976. Trump leads by just 2 points. Here's more of Trump's reaction to those internal polls in a portion of ABC News' interview that aired yesterday.
Even your own polls show you're behind right now, don't they?
No, my polls show that I'm winning everywhere.
I don't know. We've all seen these reports that with 15 out of 17 states, you spent $2 million on a poll and you're behind in 15 out of 17 states.
Nobody showed you those polls because those polls don't exist, George. Those polls don't exist. But I just had a meeting with somebody that's a pollster, and I'm winning everywhere. But we're getting tremendous polls.
Those poll results so irritating to the president that a few seconds later, he has to go off the record to call his campaign manager.
Okay, so hold it off for a little while. Just call Brad on the phone, and I want to ask him that question, okay?
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.